Welcome back to Right at the Wire. As part of our Keeneland card series, we're going to look at Friday's late pick four at Keeneland. So let's take a look and see if we can come up with a ticket. The first leg of the late pick four is the seventh race at Keeneland, and it's a maiden special weight for 3-year-old fillies run on the dirt at 6.5 furlongs. Number one is Coppa Girl, trained by Brad Cox, got his A-rider Florin Giroux on him, and Constitution is pretty good with first-time starters. I look at this one's pedigree, though, and it kind of says 2 turns to me more than it does sprint. Just something to keep in the back of the mind, and there is a fairly substantial gap between the last work and the one prior. So it's you can't deny these connections. I mean, Brad Cox, he's good with first time starters, and yeah, I would use this one for sure. But just keep in mind, I think this one probably wants 2 turns, and maybe there might be others who can win this. So definitely use because it's Brad Cox for sure. Number 2 is Truly Grateful, and this is another one who looks to me more like grass or roots than sprints by Violence with King Mambo underneath. You got our Rat Ortiz aboard, so Michael Stidham probably has some expectations here. He's good with first-time starters, that's for sure. This one has a little gap in the work tab, but looks like she's got some speed. It looks like she wants more distance and grass. So, I mean, as I said, I think this one looks like she's got some speed. So I think you got to use, but don't be surprised if maybe it comes down the road a little bit. Under Advisement is trained by Brendan Walsh, who, he tends to like to take his time with horses, and you don't see that real precocious first-time starter sire, and Walsh isn't so great with him. So, I don't see anything really special about this one, so I would just assume wait one. I think there's others better suited. Hide Right Away is on the right track, that's for sure. The last race at Laurel almost pulled it off, but those buyers are a little light in this field and probably not going to cut it. The other thing that you can't like is the fact that this one was up for a tag for the first 4 starts. So I'm going to pass on this one, and I just think there's others that appeal better. Magic Loot is trained by Ian Wilkes, and he is not the greatest at first-time starters or maidens in general. He likes to take his time developing horses and let them run into shape. However, he's a hot barn. This is the first time I've ever seen Ian Wilkes with a hot barn. So I think you got to take a second look at this one, and you can see this cutting back to a sprint from the last effort at a 1-turn mile. So I'd have to say that's a pretty good one. And there's been a substantial layoff. The tab looks halfway decent. So more than anything else, Brian Hernandez Jr. also is the jockey. Really, more than anything else, it's because the barn is hot that maybe you want to think about this one. She's been facing some decent company too, so there's some things to like. I might prefer others, but there are some things to like here. Sassy Walker is trained by Phil D'Amato, who was, again, another hot barn. He's 2 for 2 so far. We know Phil D'Amato does his best work on turf out on the West Coast. So when you see a dirt runner, immediately I want to do a little deeper dive. Flavian Pratt is the jockey, and he's doing just fine at Keeneland, as you can see. There's a pretty good work top here. Phil D'Amato's about 12% with first-time starters on dirt. This one's by Munnings, and he's at 15% with first-time starters. So you've got some potential precocity here, and the barn is hot. This one did go at the Keeneland sale for $180,000, so I think there's some expectations here. And what I like in this field, particularly when you consider the first 2 we talked about have more 2-turn pedigree, this one has more 1-turn pedigree. So is by Munnings. That Munnings was a sprint champion, and so was Speightstown, his father. So maybe this one, because it's more in the wheelhouse of what they want to do, you think about this one. And I think since Phil D'Amato's based in California, if you brought this one east, um, with the bigger purses and whatnot at Keeneland that maybe that this one's live. So I would definitely use the Sassy Walker. Excuse me. Delaney's Grace accelerates 6% with first time starters, and this barn is. I really don't have much info on it, but it doesn't look like first time starters are a real big thing. So I would just prefer to wait with this one because I really don't have any reason to look otherwise. Check engine light is kind of the logical favorite here. Got Luis Saez aboard, which you gotta love. This one just came out of a stakes race where we sort of thrown to the wolves a little bit, and didn't really run terribly well. Finished last, but prior to that, her form was getting better with every start. You see, the margin of defeat was shrinking significantly, and she was the favorite around one turn at a mile at Aqueduct prior to the stakes race. So this one's getting it and getting close. Uh, I think it's logical to expect another move forward, and I certainly think moving from stakes company back to the maidens is logical. So Gold Square Racing is a good outfit. They also own Instant Coffee, was on the Derby Trail. So I think this one you logically include. She's a small town girl. Is trained by Mike Maker. Got Tyler Gaffalione on him, and they've been picking things up a little bit at Keeneland as of late. Interesting note that this one is also entered in a turf maiden race, and being by Oscar Performance, that isn't a big surprise. So we'll just have to see which one she runs it. Her last start was rather interesting, and I thought it was kind of a lousy ride by Tyler Gaffalione, which you can't say too often. This one sprung out of the gate, was right up in the lead, and then he took her back and she kind of lost all control and lost position, and it cost her the race because then she did re-rally and closed pretty well. But you just want to think that if she had stayed up near the lead, she might have had a better chance to win. Needless to say, her first race was a key race. Punch Bowl just missed out in the Ashland, and Sacred Witch did well in the Gulfstream Park Oaks. So, and Unsung Melody won the next start that she ran in. So she's been in some good company. This one has some talent. Trained by Mike Maker. I think this one would be a logical use. It depends which race she runs in, though. So I think there's some class here. You want to definitely think about this one. Corey Felice is trained by Michael Pulick, is not the greatest with first-time starters, and Run Happy is at 8%. The work tab looks kind of pedestrian, and I don't see much to think about here, so I wouldn't use. Sister Woman is really interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, Brendan Walsh trains. Now, Brendan Walsh is notorious for not being good with first-time starters, as we mentioned earlier. But his barn is hot right now. And he's got Johnny V aboard this one, who has also not had a great start to the meet, but it's John Velasquez. You know that's not going to last. This one's by Bolt Doro. Bolt Doro is a great first-time starter sire. And if you look at this one's work tab, it's pretty darn good. Looks really solid. Now, what excites me more than anything else is I mentioned to you about a runner earlier. This one is built for speed and sprints with Cherokee Run on the bottom and Bolt Oro on the top. This one is probably going to really like the distance. Now, I don't know what the odds are going to be, but I have a feeling the Cox horse will probably take a majority of the betting. So you may get this one lying in the weeds. So to me, this one is a sneaky good use, and hopefully we can get some value to bring it home. The second leg of the late pick four is the eighth race at Keeneland, and it's an N3X allowance race for 4-year-olds and up, fillies and mares, and it's to be run on the turf at a mile and a 16th. Number one is Juncture. This is one that the A-level connections owned by Judmont, trained by Brad Cox. Florent Giroux is a rider aboard. Brad Cox is 38% and 88% in the money in this scenario. So kind of hard not to include this one, especially when you take a look and see that this one has been running at class levels significantly higher than the Americans here. In particular, has been running at the Curragh, which is Ireland's best track, and Newmarket, which is one of England's best tracks. You also note that this one has carried weight at 136 pounds in the William Hill 4-back. So that tells me, you see by the odds, this one was pretty well thought of. So I think it's a logical use for sure. Fastest Flight isn't bad, and was did okay in the Honey Fox. It was early pace favored, so it was a little tough to make any headway. And of course, White Frost just came back and ran a pretty good third um, at Keeneland over the weekend. And Faith in Humanity is a nice horse, and really the early pace was sort of governing the Honey Fox. So it's not a big knock on her. She prior to that race, this one was making a solid progression, and you see the buyers are getting better every single race, including the Honey Fox, where she ran a pretty good fourth. So this one isn't a bad choice to use, I don't think. You've got Rod Ortiz on. I think there's some intent here, and I would consider this one a use as well. Via Reggio is another European import. And basically, if you like Juncture, you have to like Via Reggio because she beat her in the Snow Ferry, the last race. Now, it's coming off a long layoff, but Brendan Walsh is pretty good with long layoffs. And you do get Tyler Gaffleone. Again, this one has been running at higher class levels than she's facing today, and also has carried weight. So there's some good intent here. So I think this one is one you maybe think about. I kind of like Juncture a little better. If you see, you look at the odds this one was running against, even back on April 2nd in Leopardstown, she was 100-1. So maybe it was just lightning in a bottle the last race. I don't know. But I think this one has demonstrated can run at a pretty good class level. So I think you have to consider, but I like number one a little better. Justify My Love. The last race was just a complete and utter dud. She did not run a lick at all. It had nothing to do with the field. It had nothing to do with the bias towards early speed. Nothing. She just didn't run at all. And that was a bit of a disappointment, considering prior to that, she had been looking like things were picking up a little bit. Got an N2X win, and that was a key race. And all systems looked to be go, and then that happened. So aside from that, this one's been kind of hit or miss, and does get Lasix again, and maybe that helps a little bit. But our form is a little shaky, and I'm not going to back her. Trobairitz is trained by Neil Pessin, and if this was a big stakes day, I'd be more excited about her. Her last race in the Tom Benson was absolutely nowhere. 28 lengths back. Prior to that, had an N2X win as well, and won by 10 lengths, and much the best when it came off the turf. Her buyers are a little light compared to some of the others in here, or what we would expect you'll get from Juncture or Via Reggio. So I can't really back this one, particularly that last effort, without a freshening or any excuse whatsoever. I think that I just can't back this one. Bipartisanship is kind of mercurial. As a late runner, not going to have a lot of pace to run to in this race. There's not a lot of early leg signed on here. You do get Luis Saez, and this one has some talent and has a good closing kick when there's pace to run to, I think. You're not going to get that here. And the last couple of starts prior to the layoff weren't the greatest, so maybe the freshening is going to help this one. Graham Motion's pretty good with long layoffs. And so I think this race, it doesn't set up well for this one, but she'll likely be running late, and I could see being under, but the lack of early pace makes it doubtful that she'd be a win candidate. Fancy Martini did all the heavy lifting in the last race on synthetic, and it was better than it looks. I mean, she had to duel all the way around, and that's death on synthetic, as we know. So I thought that was a really good effort. I'm thinking to switch to turf with Joe Sharp, James Graham. They're 44% together, 4 for 9. I think you're going to get a good effort out of this one, but looks a little light class wise, and so I don't think we can back for those reasons. Trail Ridge Road is another one that we had kind of some high hopes for in the Benson, and then really didn't do very much running at all. Lost to Didia, who's a really nice horse who I like, and that was a pretty good field. But again, the buyers look a little light, and that was kind of a class test, I think, that last one, and she really didn't pass it. So I don't think we could consider Trail Ridge Road, although it should be running late, and you do get a price maybe you think for underneath in the exotics. Valentina Day is very interesting to me. He's trained by Ben Colebrook, who's having a pretty good year, and Luann Machado is not having a good meet so far, but the two of them click pretty well together. But that's not the thing that really gets me interested. What does is the debut at 4 years old in March. This one ran a career high buyer. It was on synthetic, but she was much the best. When you see a note cleared off and wrapped up, that basically means that form, that race was basically no challenge to her whatsoever. Now, this is turf, that's true, but this one, I think, if you look at her running lines, tends to be up near the pace. And I think she's probably going to get on the lead in this race. And if she takes another move forward and the Europeans sputter a little bit, adjusting to their first time in the States, I think you got a really good opportunity for this one to wire the field. I think you're going to get some value. So why not include it at a price? Arm Candy just looks to me like a cut below. The Sand Springs really didn't do very much running. And if you look, this one is in the has been okay at the ungraded stakes level, but I just kind of think that um, this one is a cut below class wise. Going back on Lasix definitely is going to help. I think that may have been the reason why this one didn't run very well in the last race. You look back in the Valley View, she didn't run on Lasix either and was up the track. So perhaps that has something to do with it. So maybe you get an improved effort here, but I just like others better, and I'm just not willing to back based on that. The Little King's Princess is main track only. I fully expect this race to be run on turf. If it's not, obviously this is one you want to include. But for our purposes right now, there's really no need to evaluate. The third leg of the late pick four is the ninth at Keeneland. It's the Grade 3 Doubledogdare Stks. It's run at a mile and a 16th on the dirt for 4-year-olds and up, fillies and mares. Number one is Traverse. This one has been progressing nicely. The last win in particular was pretty impressive. Just kind of blew that field away, and is running at a better class level as the class levels increase. And you always like to see that. That's a really positive sign. Um, in really deep waters here, and this is the first class test. Um, you're going to get a decent price. But that race in the Pippin, she got hammered on the rail and could never get free. And you've got some other speed to her outside that are probably going to get to the spot a little faster. It's not impossible with this one, but it's a little bit. I would tend to wait one, but if you like her, I wouldn't. You want to try to upset the apple cart. This isn't a bad choice at all. Number two is Green Up. Todd Pletcher, Erod Ortiz, Team Valor, fantastic connections. This one has been pretty solid, has been progressing nicely, and the cotillion last time was a little wide and had ran against Society, who was just a beast on the front end that day. So there's been a bit of a layoff, and this is the debut at 4. I'll expect this one to progress and run better. Only one with 100 buyer in the field, and so this one can run and did beat Interstate Daydream, who's here today. The only thing that kind of bothers me is that there's three horses in this race who all want the lead, and they're all going to be vying for it. So while this one I think could definitely contend, I mean Todd Pletch is 35% in this spot with a long layoff, so you definitely got to use for sure. But I'm just not certain that any of the front runners are going to be able to get the upper hand because they're all going to be dueling with each other early. Number 3 is Frost Point. Flavian Pratt in the irons, Bill Mott training, Godolphin owning, another A-level connections. This one has been getting steadily better. The last two in particular, um, the late 4-year-old and the early 5-year-old campaign, they're both really solid efforts, and it definitely looks like this one is on the upswing. Coming off a layoff for Bill Mott, that should mean an absolute use. I would think at 12-1, that's a fantastic price. This one does not need the lead. This one can stalk. I think that's really important in this race. And while the buyers are a little bit light, I think another move forward is definitely in the offing here. And with the other speed dueling, this one could be sitting right behind and benefit from it. So at 12-1, I think this one is you have to consider. Interstate Daydream, Brad Cox, Florent Giroux. There it is, right there. It's hard to go against Brad Cox anywhere these days, but this one's a 6-5 favorite, and I think that's a bit of an underlay when you get given the other horses in the field, especially since a lot of them all want to get to the lead. Now, the Aziri, losing to Secret Oath and Clairiere is no sin whatsoever. Um, and was factoring in the race. So we got a third. So this one definitely can run. There's no doubt about that. Second off the layoff, probably can expect better. I just wonder with the presence of Green up and another speed that it's going to be kind of tough to get away and take this one down. I think you probably have to use this one, but I think it's going to be a tall order with given the other speed. Moonswag, Brendan Walsh is going pretty well right now. He's got Luis Saez in the irons, which is about as good as you can get right now. Um, this one will have some pace to run to. Comes from well off of it, and that's a good thing. But I think it's not very likely that this one can overcome the class challenge here. You see in the Azeri didn't do much running at all, running against uh, Secret Oath, Clairiere, and Interstate Daydream. So, you're going to get a price, and I think this one maybe you can use underneath, but I don't consider this one a win candidate. Music Street is lightly raced, and this will be a huge class test. This one's been doing pretty well. It's been progressing and had a nice win the last time to conclude the 3-year-old year. Coming off a layoff, could be any kind. I mean, we don't know if this one's will build from the 3-year-old form. But I think it's likely. But I think she's in over her head this time, and I'm going to wait one, so I won't be using. Hidden Connection is another one who wants to lead. And you got Brett Calhoun, you got Relu Gutierrez, you got good connections here. But this one seems to run best when she can be on the engine and control the pace. And I don't think she's going to get that chance here with the speed to her inside. So I don't think the race sets up terribly well for this one. Has ability for sure, but I just kind of like the other two early speeds better, and I wouldn't use in this spot. Shotgun Hottie, trained by Cherie DeVoe. The barn's going really well right now, and you got Tyler Gaffleone aboard. So there's good connections there. This one is the thing that bothers me is this one has a lot of seconds in graded stakes, and I got a nice win last time at the option 50 level, but this is a big step up from here. Can rate, and I think that's a good thing here. I'm just not sure the top end is there to close this out. But if she could take another move forward, and that would put her in the mix, I think at a price maybe the exotics are a better bet. And I don't think you really want to use this one as a win candidate. The fourth and final leg of the late Pick Four is the 10th race at Keeneland. Then it's an N1X allowance for 3-year-olds run on the turf at a mile and an eighth. And number one is Mooncat. Chris Davis is a pretty good trainer. This one is that last race, it hasn't really turned out very well. Aside from Far Bridge, really nobody in behind him has factored terribly well, and so that I don't know that that helps the cause here. This one's he's okay. I mean, in this field, he's got probably a shot at underneath better than anything else. But I don't think I'd use him. Number two is Ocean Point. He's did really well in the Rushaway. It was granted it was on synthetic, but he does have some turf form back for his 2-year-old campaign, and they started him there. So I think that's a good sign. He has made steady incremental improvement. You can see it. And in the last race, he closed really well. He's got Orlando Mojica on him again, who's a nice jockey. He's underrated. And Richard S. Franco's done pretty well at Keeneland so far, 1 for 3. Um, the best thing about this one is the class levels the horse is running at are improving as the class levels of the race increase. And that's the most potent angle I can think of. So I really like Ocean Point in this spot. Really, the question more than anything is there going to be pace to run to? He looks like he can rate a little close to it, and I think that'll help him here. And I think this is one you definitely want to use. Sam Stormy, that last maiden win was not against the greatest crop of runners, and he's aside from that, he really hasn't done a whole lot of running. He debuted at a turf sprint and he got a fourth, but only came back with a 60 buyer. So I think this one I'm not expecting a step up here in improvement, and I'm not going to use. Two-way crossing is another one. He's run at the same class level for 3 straight races, so he's not improving. And the last effort you can look at and say, well, he ran against Web Slinger, but if you can, you consider that his running isn't getting better, then that tells you that he's not improving. So, and he'd need a little bit of a step up to handle this group. Now, he is coming off a layoff, and Roger Hadfield trains him, but I just think that's a really bad sign when you see a plateau early on in the career, and usually there may be some improvement coming, but I'm going to wait to see it. Battle of Normandy is really logical in this spot. Trained by Shug McGahee, Rod Ortiz, West Point Thoroughbreds, great connections. This one didn't do bad in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, finishing 5th behind Victoria Road, Silver Knot. I mean, those are really nice runners. This one definitely had won at first asking over 2 turns on turf, so not easy to do. So I think this one definitely has ability, has been keeping good company at 2. The only concern I have is that we really liked Pleasant Passage in her debut at 3 years old, following a really solid effort in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. And she didn't run a bad race, but she didn't fire quite like we thought she was going to. So I'm kind of thinking maybe we can expect the same here. The bigger issue is there's really not a lot of pace for this one to run to. This is the class of the field. I think you have to use him as a win candidate, but I definitely wonder if he's going to be able to find he's going to have pace to run to late. Roja Redemption, the maiden win was not very good against a very good class of horses, and I think that was validated by the really non-factor performance in the Rushaway. I don't think this one's good enough, and even the surface switch, I don't think is going to change that. Flintshire is not a very good first turf sire to boot, so I don't like this one. Reckoning Force, I think, is really interesting. Tyler Gaffleone aboard and Brendan Walsh training. This one has kept good company and done pretty well. He's got a few wins under the belt, or he's got one under the belt, I should say. But he's got some good performances at higher class levels than here. Um, the He's got a he broke his maiden in the stakes race, which doesn't happen too often at Kentucky Downs. And you go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back. The rush away, I think we could draw a line through it. The synthetic isn't what he wants. But if you go back to the black gold, he hung in there and he was able to set the pace, and he was overtaken very late. Now, the fact that there's not a lot of early pace in this race gives me the feeling that this one will probably go to the lead. And, he's got he appears to have the class levels where he would be very competitive here, and without a lot of challenge on the lead, I think he could very well wire this field. So I think Reckoning Force is definitely one that you should think about using. Ironsides is kind of interesting. He comes from that rush away, and he didn't really run a lick in that race. But prior to that, once they got him off of dirt, where he obviously wasn't comfortable, he's done a lot better. He broke his maiden in synthetic. Granted, it was at the claiming level, which you never like to see, because it means they were willing to part with him at 2 years old. But came right back after he broke his maiden and didn't do bad in the Leonidas. And Funtastic, again, is a nice horse. So it was a pretty decent third. Gives you the idea maybe this one has a little more to offer. We'll draw a line through the rush away and just assume that he needed one off the layoff. So moving back to turf, I think is a good thing for this one. Probably is going to try to be up near the lead, just rating behind. And I think, while I don't consider this one to be a real bona fide win candidate, I think underneath is very likely for a good trainer like Vicky Oliver, who's good second off the layoff. So at 30-1, I think you consider this one underneath. Our Dream Ride just kind of looks like a work in progress to me. Ian Wilkes is doing really well at this meet so far, so you have to kind of upgrade the evaluation a little bit going right off the bat. You see, this one broke the maiden around 2 turns at Saratoga, so that's always a good sign. And it's kept some pretty decent company. Has run the With Anticipation and the Bourbon. Didn't really factor in either. And the N1X got a third behind General Jim, which another nice horse. That's no knock there. So first time at the Colonel Liam, really didn't really factor a whole lot, but that was a really good field. Web Slinger, Dude in Colorado, Papio, those are good horses. So second off the layoff, I think it's very likely we could expect some improvement. I don't know how much and whether or not this one could factor, but at 6-1, you're getting square value, and this is one you might want to think about on your tickets. Number 10 is Read On. He's likely going to be a pace factor. You can see he likes to run early on, but I doubt he has the ability to close the deal in this one. He's just not fast enough, so I'm not going to use him. Mick Money is he's been doing a little better with every start. He's making incremental improvement. The big problem here is McCracken is 0% with first turfers, and this would be this one's first effort on turf. I don't really see enough here to believe that this one's going to factor, so I'm not going to use. The main track only is Winter's Line, and honestly, I would rather see him on the turf in this race because he's pretty good, and I always kind of like this horse, and he's why they're moving him to dirt, I'm not really sure, but in any event, he probably won't run because I don't expect this will be moved off the turf, so it's a fait accompli to think about. So here's what our ticket looks like for the late pick 4. In the 7th, the maiden race, so we got a spread. It's a pretty deep one. And we're going to go 1, 6, 8, 9, and 11. In the 8th, we're going to go 1, 3, 9. I left you the option of adding the 2 if you would like. And in the 9th, we're going to use 2, 3, and 4. And in the 10th, 5, and 7. So that's 5 times 3, 50 times 3 is 45 times 2 is 90. Divided by 2 is $45 on a 50-cent base. So that's our look at a Pick 4 ticket. There's a couple of different ways you can go there, and hopefully our analysis helps you formulate your own ticket. We'll continue with the Keeneland Card Series throughout the rest of the weekend and next week to conclude the spring meet. We'll also have videos for you on the elements of handicapping for the Kentucky Derby, and we'll do another top 20 list and to see if maybe there's any defections or whatnot over the next couple of days, and then we'll get a better idea what the field looks like. Of course, if you like what you see here, please like and subscribe. And thanks so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate your viewership. And I'll be talking to you very soon. And until then, be well.